From the stock bottle, we pour about 30 to 50 milliliters of 1 molar zinc solution into a 100 milliliter beaker. We also pour a similar amount of 1 molar copper sulfate solution into another beaker. In this experiment, it is very important that we label all the glassware that we use. So volumetric flasks and beakers should be labeled with the contents. We start out by preparing a 0.1 molar zinc sulfate solution. That means we need to dilute the 1.0 molar stock 1 to 10. We measure out 25 milliliters with a volumetric pipette. Making sure we look at the meniscus at eye level. When the meniscus sits on the line, we have exactly 25 milliliters in our pipette. Transfer this to a 250 milliliter volumetric flask and drain the pipette. We fill up the flask with distilled water. To begin with, we can pour the water from a bottle or a beaker to fill up the volume. It is important to keep an eye on the level of the volume and slow down the addition when we get closer to the line. The last little bit we add dropwise with the dropper. Again, we look at the meniscus at eye level, and the flask is filled with exactly 250 milliliters when the meniscus sits on the line. Next, we prepare a 0.1 molar copper sulfate solution by measuring out 25 milliliters of 1 molar copper sulfate into a 250 milliliter volumetric flask and filling this up with distilled water. Once it's filled to the line, we put a stopper on the top and invert the flask several times to ensure homogeneous solution throughout the flask. We have now prepared a 0.1 molar copper sulfate and 0.1 molar zinc sulfate solution. As you can see, the heights of the solutions in the flask look quite different. Both flasks are filled exactly to the line. This shows how important it is to pay attention to where the line is before filling up the flask. Next, we are going to prepare a 0.01 molar copper sulfate solution. For that, we pour some of our 0.1 molar solution that we've just prepared into a beaker and measure out 10 milliliters of this solution with a volumetric pipette. We transfer the 10 milliliters into a 100 milliliter flask. For these dilute copper solutions, we fill up the flask with 0.1 molar potassium nitrate solution. We do not use distilled water for filling the flask. To prepare a 0.001 molar copper sulfate solution, we pour some of the just prepared 0.01 molar solution into a beaker and measure out 10 milliliters of this into a 100 milliliter flask. Again, we fill this up with 0.1 molar potassium nitrate solution. Now we have several dilutions of copper and our 0.1 molar zinc solution and can set up our cell. We grab a copper electrode and a zinc electrode and sand their surfaces to ensure that we have pure metal on the surface of each electrode. To set up the cell, we connect the red wire to the copper electrode and suspend this in the copper solution. The black wire is connected to the zinc electrode and this is suspended in the zinc solution. We choose the correct setting on the voltmeter and complete the cell by placing a salt bridge between the two beakers. We watch the display for the voltage to steady and then take a reading. Immediately after that, we disconnect the cell again by taking out the salt bridge or taking the electrodes out of the solutions. For the last measurement, both solutions will need to be cooled in an ice bath.